Welcome to the Tech Days, Munich Tech Days 2020. It's this time a different format. Everybody knows it from being in real, on stage with real people. Nonetheless, this digital format this time is as exciting and thrilling as the real stuff with real people, because here are real people. So I would like, first of all, to thank the organization team of Munich Tech Days 2020. They did a great job in pulling together a really awesome agenda with workshops, keynote speeches, interviews. And one of the really greatest and most exciting interviews is, of course, this now, where I have the honor to have Jens Rittmer here with me. So he's principal for new products at Google. And he's going to, or we will go to talk about the recent activities joined by Google and Apple. It's still hot off the press. The press announcement was by end of May, and Google and Apple, they are enable a solution which is triggered by COVID in order to be able to react faster, react better based on this enablement platform. So my first question to you, Jens, would be, what is this exposure notification and what is it enabling and why is it important?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for letting us talk about this exciting technology, which could be one puzzle piece in the fight against COVID-19. Quite obviously, this is not going to be the silver bullet. It's only one small puzzle piece, and we're going to need a lot of activity from governments, from institutions, and from society to help this fight in COVID-19. So we call them exposure notifications. Apple and Google have kind of renamed the contact tracing description into exposure notifications, because we think that exposure notification describes in a better way what it actually means. These exposure notifications are alerts that people can receive on their phones, and these alerts are supposed to letting them know that they may have been exposed to someone who has tested positive or is highly likely to have COVID-19. These initiatives are meant to support and augment public health authorities' existing contact tracing efforts. They're not supposed to replace them. And just for clarity, neither Apple or Google are building apps. Apps are being built by governments, health authorities provided by governments. And the initiative that Apple and Google are partnering about is something that you could call a catalyst in enabling this technology, these apps, to run better, to run smoother, more interoperable and more effective on the millions of phones of users worldwide. The technology that is used is not based on GPS or location data. So no GPS or location data is stored. Also, no private information is stored in this model. And the Bluetooth signal that is driving this technology can indicate the proximity to the next phone and thereby also protect people's privacy. So privacy is in the midst of the entire development of all of this. And quite importantly, public health authorities may decide how the notifications will be triggered. So in the event that someone says, I am now entering a new status into the app, that I'm now COVID positive, you always have to give consent as an end user, so it's all voluntary. The government can decide what next steps to advise to those people that may be notified, and then how to reach these exposed individuals for further contact tracing and potential containment initiatives. So again, it's the entire setup, the entire technology has very strong privacy principles built in, very high security standards, and we're working very closely and very constructively with governments worldwide on this technology.
Okay, so this sounds really awesome and challenging, because we hear a lot of technology, we hear a lot of enabling, we hear a lot of aspects which are not technology driven. So the question going further would be, so what in your current situation, what are your challenges at hand, or challenges you see in both respects, right? So it's on the one hand side, it would be legal and social, maybe. And on the other hand side, it would be the technical part. So what would you see as your current challenges with this journey currently?
So the actual current challenges are helping literally dozens of governments to bring their apps, their individual apps, into the app stores of both Apple and Google. So there's a ton of activity at the moment going on, helping governments, helping the implementation companies of governments to work with the API. We're providing this technology through a programming interface, an API, and our engineering folks are currently busy day and night, weekend and weekday, to help public authorities around the world to actually launch their apps. I don't think that we have so many legal challenges, because there's been a lot of thinking, despite the fact that this product is so new and it's been created at a crazy speed, even for companies like Google and Apple. The API, the tech development, all the engineering resources have been created at an insane speed, literally within weeks. And typically these things would be built in maybe half a year or a year. So there's a crazy speed at which all of this is developed. Nevertheless, we are working obviously in a sensitive area where we have to be extremely privacy conscious and security conscious. So as I mentioned, this entire technology has been built with privacy and security built at the core. Quite interesting, some people have even criticized us for being too restrictive on privacy and security issues, because we take this so seriously. So I don't think we face so many legal questions. The challenge will be to drive adoption of this. So once the first apps are out in the market, we have seen in the past weeks, we have seen the first governments to roll out the first apps built on this technology. In order to make these apps effective for the public health authorities, you need a high level of adoption rates. So you need a lot of users using this app so that they can anonymously be informed about potential exposures. And therefore building trust with end users, making sure that people understand what this is about, that it's not about location tracing, it's not about sharing any kind of health information, it's not about sharing any kind of individual information. It's also not about Apple or Google storing or having access to any data. This is only a service that can help users, societies globally to help fight COVID-19 in the months to come, where we see many governments slowly releasing from lockdown, and everybody's looking at the second curve, the second wave that every government worldwide is trying to avoid. This can be a helpful tool in measuring that and giving health authorities technical guidance and technical tools to help drive their epidemiological decisions and insights and analysis making.
So it's really interesting. So you enable a complete ecosystem by these efforts, and it's also really impressive that the two giants really came together, and within lightning speed, enabling an API, a platform, in order to stimulate a ecosystem which is really of high value for the society, right? Looking into the short history of what you achieved in a very compressed time, so what do you think, as a kind of Google, Apple, what do you foresee in terms of co-working in this area? So do you also see other areas where this technology might be helpful? What are the next steps? Other technologies? You said, like, there are multiple technologies like GPS. It can be anything, right? So in BLE, so Bluetooth, is of course a really good technology, which is really helpful in this use case. So two things. One thing is how do you see the co-working going on this specific, let's say, topic? And I think there are lots of more areas. So what are your thoughts on other areas where this could be applicable and helpful?
So, I mean, Apple and Google have a long history of partnering on a number of products and issues. This is an unusual partnership, without any doubt. As you said in the beginning, triggered by COVID-19. As governments and public health authorities around the world had been ramping up their own contact tracing efforts, they had called both Apple and Google for help, because some of the apps that had been done without this, before the API had been created, some of the contact tracing apps that some governments had already created ran into some technical challenges. So contact tracing apps that rely on Bluetooth didn't work very well. Some of the apps have been draining the battery life quite quickly. And there was also interoperability issues. So, from operating system to operating system, can an iPhone user use an app and detect a potential exposure to someone who's using an Android phone? And also, if you look at the Android ecosystem, you have hundreds of manufacturers of phones with thousands or tens of thousands of devices built by these manufacturers. So there's a lot of interoperability questions that you need to take into consideration when you build apps that are aimed at reaching tens of millions of users in a given country. So these technical challenges led governments and public health authorities to reach out to Apple and Google, and we tried to sit together and see what can we do on an operating system level to create a catalyst, to create an ease up function to help these apps built by governments run better, more smoothly, more battery preserving, and more interoperable with these devices of hundreds of manufacturers, and also interoperably between operating systems. So this was the birth of a very quick and fast-paced product, which resulted into the creation of the idea of this API that is used on an operating system level to help these apps run smoother. And it's obviously a quite unusual partnership. This technology, and this is really important, this technology is only being built for COVID-19. So we're not going to use this as an infrastructure for additional applications, for additional diseases, or for additional use cases built by governments or health authorities. So this API, this programming interface, will have some end date as soon as COVID-19 is over, and we all hope that this moment will be rather sooner than later. This API will regionally be switched off, so that we don't build an infrastructure that can be used or abused by governments worldwide for other services or other use cases. So this is specifically created for COVID-19 fighting.
So just assuming there are lots of people being really interested now and triggered by this, let's say, really great video with insights. Is there, how do I get the information? Is there any information in the internet, in the wherever? Are there user groups or whatsoever? So where would I have to look at if I'm interested and want to keep the information flowing and get the status being enabled, for example, as a beta programmer or as a programmer? Where do I have the chance to get the information?
Sure. So all of the information that is related to this technology has been made public, both by Apple and by Google. So both companies have created blogs with links to open source information describing the API, describing the technology, describing encryption, user case flows, and all these informations. So you can go to your favorite search engine and search for Apple, Google, exposure notifications, and you'll be linked to blog posts of both Apple and Google with links to all these documents. And a lot of the documentation is also done by many governments publicly. So there's a lot of stuff on GitHub from various governments, including the German government. I'm based in Germany, so I'm closely following the developments of the tracing app in Germany as well. I'm scheduled to arrive mid-June, so really soon. So a lot of this information has been made public. We also want to be tested. So if people in the research community and the development community see things that they would like to, where they would like to provide suggestions for improvements, we're all open for this, and we would like to engage in conversations. Absolutely.
Thanks, Jens, for all the information. So just to try to summarize right now. So I think it's really tremendous success that Google and Apple really recognized the importance of having a cross-platform solution answer to this COVID as a COVID response in order to maximize the footprint and the data which is required in order to really answer this big challenge we currently have. So that's one important part I learned today. The other part is where I have, which is always on the minds of the people, is the sensitivity aspect of the data. It's taken very serious. It's taken fully into account, and it feels like we shouldn't really be scared about that. Another part which pays into this is also the fact that there's everything in open source. So this is always a good sign to the big community if something is available in open source, because this gives a lot of transparency. Another part which is a tremendous argument for this is serious, this is good, this is needed, and this feels a little bit strange maybe, is the fact that you also have this regional turn off of this API when it's not needed anymore. So this really shows the focus on helping the society and helping the health around the world, really counterfighting this COVID situation we are currently in. The other part is you maximize the usage of it. So you enabled a complete ecosystem around it, which is jointly working on this. I can really imagine how much activity and traffic and engagement is there currently. So it's really great that you did this in such a short time frame, and also looking at the fact that it's really two giants enabling this in lightning speed. It's really great for everybody on this planet, I would say, which is really real, which is a fact. And the other part is, if people are interested, want to know more, as you said before, just go to your favorite search engine and look for the material at hand, which is available, and also for the next steps until it is step by step turned down again. You keep going in this ecosystem with Google and Apple, not leaving guys alone now, but keeping the strong force and keeping the power of your companies to even enrich the ecosystem even more. So Jens, a big thank you for your insights, for having pleasure. For me, it was a real pleasure and the opportunity to have this discussion with you. So once again, a big thank you from my side.
Thank you also from my side. It's been a pleasure to getting the chance to explain a little bit what we're doing and what we're not doing in the technical fight against COVID-19. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is only one small puzzle piece in the global pandemic fight against COVID-19. So to all of you, stay safe. There's going to be a lot of additional challenges going forward. The economic rebounds is going to be one of the big challenges. How to help startups, how to further help small and medium-sized businesses to drive the economy further to get back into a normal situation. There's also one additional crisis, the climate crisis, that we all as a society also need to tackle after COVID-19 is over and after we have hopefully successfully solved the first two steps. So until then, please stay safe, stay healthy, and I wish you all a great rest of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jens.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much that you give us the opportunity today to introduce you to the project Gaia-X. The project Gaia-X was launched last year in October 19 on the occasion of the Digital Summit in Germany and was driven politically then by France and Germany. Today there are participants of more than 300 companies and institutions to do a lot of project work. On June 4th, just a few days ago, The results were presented. We presented 5 documents, among them, for example, proposal for an architecture of Gaia-X and many others. What is the idea behind Gaia-X? We want to set up a federated and trustworthy innovative data infrastructure and data ecosystem. We want really have to create in Europe the next generation of an infrastructure. Data sovereignty is key in that field. European players, and this is valid, I guess, for every company and organization and stakeholder in the world, everybody wants to use the opportunities of the data economy. But then you need to have the right infrastructure, the right mechanism that you can really decide what you want to do with your data, how you want to use and share them. That's why we want to establish mechanisms for data sharing with respect to ownership of data. Data availability is key to apply, for example, artificial intelligence algorithms and so on. And it's the source of innovation. Though in the end, we really drive the system to be more innovative than in the past. To use all the treasures we have in Europe, which lies within our industry, and to use it for future business models. Before I hand over to Sabine to give you more insights into the mechanisms of Gaia-X, just want to give you a brief outlook of Gaia-X. At the core of Gaia-X are European values like GDPR, but many others. And the project is definitely open for international participation. An utmost goal is to integrate Gaia-X into the strategy of the EU on data. We are already in intense coordination with the EU Commission. The establishment of a non-profit Gaia-X Foundation as ASBL was already announced. It will be finalized maybe in autumn this year. This Gaia-X Foundation will play a very important role in setting up a governance procedure for Gaia-X and to provide federated services necessary to make Gaia-X happen. In the end, we want to realize European data spaces built on the principle of Gaia-X. We have already started to further develop the technical architecture and components. We want to foster a European and international network of Gaia-X hubs to support international cooperation, awareness and application of Gaia-X across industries. You're all invited to participate in the project, which is absolutely open to everybody. And now I would like to hand over to Sabine, who will show you a bit more how Gaia-X will work. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Sabine Wilfling. Thanks for handing over, Ernst. Let's get started. Data-driven innovation. Innovations, they arise from ideas, the connection of information and data, as well as from the cooperation of clever minds. So scaling and thus the long-term success of many ideas and business models is also dependent on mainly 2 things. On one hand, of course, capital and clever minds, but on second thing, the availability of data, large amount of data is crucial. So what we need for the future to make this happen is that we need an easy, reliable way which leads us to a voluntary exchange and shared use of European data resources. And to make this happen, it is required that startups, science companies of any size can cooperate in a tighter and easier way with each other. So that is what Gaia-X is for, boosting that data-driven innovation. As we see it on my slide, I said, yeah, just as electricity somehow transformed almost everything 100 years ago, so will AI. But what is slowing down that transformation process at the moment is Yeah, the challenge, the lack of data. The lack of data and also the lack of cooperation to exchange data and to create valuable service out of it. So data and talent, they're more or less like the raw material for innovation, as we said. So let's get a little more deeper in the talk about data and availability of data and how Gaia X is assuring that. As I said, data, value change, they're like the prerequisite for innovation. Data, they arise from different sources like sensors, products, devices, non-personal data, personal data, private data pools. Yeah, so what we need is they needed to be pre-processed, they needed to be stored, transferred, and all that in a secure and reliable way. And in the end, tools and methods need to make that data valuable, like AI algorithm and something like that. So actually, we have a challenge in these end-to-end data value change. We have decentralized processing location, multiple technology stacks, and a secure access to data for multiple stakeholders without losing their sovereignty. It's quite hard and very, very expensive for single companies. So Gaia X is setting up a trustworthy data infrastructure by connecting providers and users in a unique environment of data collaboration. Here, and to make this end-to-end value chain happen. So lastly, a main thing how to establish that and to secure data sovereignty are the federated services you see here in mentioned in green. So that is what Gaia X is aiming for, helping to make these end-to-end value chain for innovation happen. Let me go more deeper into that. What do we else need to make innovation happen? So digital transformation is forcing companies to cooperate with competitors, to break industry-specific boundaries in the value creation process, and to competitively rethink the entire industry. So therefore, they need cross-sectoral data. And cross-sectoral data is more or less the key driver for the new business models. And what the federated approach of Gaia X creates is a broad base for access and also exchange of data connection between like citizens, organization, resources in an interactive data ecosystem. So we have on the top level the data infrastructure connecting different providers. Then we have the data ecosystem area, and then the cross-domain service area where we pull out of the different data pools and aggregate that data to gain smart services for each domain, for Industry 4.0, health, and else. So cross-sectoral data is in the end enabling new forms of collaboration between small-sized organizations, startups, and that is what Gaia X is also shaping with its architecture. So to make that a little bit more visible, as I said today, collaboration faces restrictions and limits, especially in the scalability of smart services, gaining out of that data. So let me explain Gaia X architecture a little bit on the domain of smart living. So smart living encompasses different areas like mobility, energy, building, and these areas and companies from electrical industry, from the real estate industry, from the tech industry, they're still completely separated from each other, and they're not sharing data as much as they could because they're having like data silos, data silos in housing, electronic industries, and that is blocking a flexible and easy collaboration of gaining new services and speeding up that transformation process we are forcing for. So insufficient mechanism for securing or trusting the access to data, increase the fear of the different parties to lose sovereignty, and are blocking this collaboration. Gaia X is solving that and enabling that shift from a data silo syncing to data ecosystems. When we go further, data infrastructure is, as we've seen, the starting point for a data ecosystem that serves only one single point: to provide companies of different size in an equal way, and people and their business ideas with data and opportunities which they need for being successful in the data economy of the future, gaining ideas for new services in the area of Industry 4.0, in the area of health, in the public sector, and making life a little bit better. So the data ecosystem of Gaia X actually contains 8 domains. Key is to make more data available and improve, as I said, the way in which data is used to tackle social, climate, also environmental challenges, and in the end, to contribute to a healthier and more sustainable society. So let's wrap it up shortly. As I said, the approach is twofold. On the one hand, Gaia X is setting up a trustworthy data infrastructure, which having a high impact on the European Cloud Federation, and therefore the design and development of cloud and edge services. But on the other hand, this is the starting point for creating an ecosystem, a data ecosystem for Europe, and the rollout of these data spaces, also named in their way in the European data strategy. Lastly, I think an important point is also that the Gaia X project is establishing standards and rules which will give data sovereignty in Europe a huge boost and make it possible to share, exchange, and collaborate in data-driven business models more closely. So, as Mr. Altmaier said last week in his press conference, Gaia X is a digital moonshot in digital policies, scaling ideas, boosting long-term success of European business models, and laying the foundation for that. So thanks very much for your attention. We are pleased to share and welcome you to participate and take a stake in this mission. Astronauts, rocketmen, rocketwomen, you're very warm welcome. Learn more about that, let me say, moonshot mission, and find some more. We're pleased to share and welcome you. Find more information and please visit the website www.data-infrastructure.eu. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Childhood was behind the Iron Curtain, and work was exalted back then as the gestalt of everything. To be human meant to be a worker, and it was a particular kind of work that was celebrated too: hard work, manual labor. When I was in first grade, we were given a homework to draw the tools of work, and I remember I drew a shovel, a stethoscope, and somehow a desktop, an object which we did not own at the time. Upon seeing the drawing the next day, the school principal quickly summoned my mother to demand an explanation. How is it that a 6 years old knew what this capitalist bourgeois object was and what kind of subversive parenting was going on? Later, when I was 10, a friend of the family, a physician, advised me, "Laura, you will not work for a living. You will think for a living. You just don't see the difference yet, but you will." And this turned out to be somewhat of a prophetic statement. I grew up to become a researcher, a profession where analytical thinking is key, and an anthropologist to boot, a discipline in which seeing and understanding difference and requiring an understanding of the changing meaning of things is fundamental. So pretty much as long as I can remember, I've been trying to see what happens if I push against dominant definition of things. What happens if I ask different questions about them and if I see them from a different angle? So this moment, this epochal moment that we are all collectively passing through with the new realities of work presents a very compelling puzzle for me.
My life started with curiosity. I'm told that the first thing I did right after birth was lifting my head and taking a good look at the world where all other babies would lie and sleep. This curiosity has been a driver throughout my whole life, and this is why I'm investing all my time to extend my life indefinitely. There's just too many things I won't be able to see and learn with a lifespan that's limited to just 100 years. It also gives me a vested interest to think about large problems and their required solution. Because if you want to live indefinitely, you need a world worth living in. So what blueprints do we create for such a world?
So when I say the future of work, a new work, what would you draw? What is it that I am sketching out here with Raphael Hochstetler in this impulse session? We want to provoke you to see differently.
We have always been changing how we work. We have been moving people away from agriculture and mining, and then away from manufacturing and towards service providing. This amounts to more than 70% of the workforce by now, and a lot of it no longer relies on physical labor, but only on basic cognitive processing. Now, with artificial intelligence and increasingly intelligent robotics, we are starting a displacement of those 70%. If you're a layer clerk used to analyze thousands of pages to find a pattern, or a radiologist looking at images of patients, a translator or an accountant, or even a manager, be prepared for a sudden but definitive change to your work reality. The big difference between automating a blue-collar job and automating a white-collar job is their physicality. Because for a machine to replace a human, I still need to build that machine, which is a very complex process which involves a lot of work at many places. And scaling the process is largely limited by the supply chain. This is not the case for white-collar jobs. They are like software, and once that software is developed, scaling is not limited by any physical factors. And I think this is largely underestimated. So there will be a shift of what people do, and that shift and the speed at which it's happening, it will be different for different kind of categories of work.
The way most people are seeing the future of work today is through a process perspective, probably driven by the reports looking at big data and macro trends. What they spell out is displacement out of one job category, potentially into another. They show the beginning of a dramatically changing occupational mix. For example, you see the 40% of Americans whose occupational category will change in the next 10 years. You see that this trend will impact already existing disparities in socioeconomic status and affect minorities the hardest. 25.5% of Hispanics, already overrepresented in certain sectors with increased risk of automation, are at risk of being displaced out of their jobs. Nearly 15 million workers under the age of 35 are in jobs at risk of automation as well, and the number of workers over 50 is close to 12 million now. Given the ever-growing upper limit of the retirement age, we cannot safely assume this group will not continue seeking employment. The reports also spell out potential geographic displacement. It is predicted that rural regions in particular will see negative job growth, and that although new jobs will appear, they will not appear in the same places, but rather shift toward large urban centers. So it's a picture of pervasive, ongoing, and dramatic change. And what these macro reports will converge on is always a single solution: reskill the individual.
Okay, think about a 40-year-old trucker that has been driving long haul for 20 years, and suddenly he's asked to become competitive with a 25-year-old programmer. It takes at least 10,000 hours to become a professional in a skill, no matter if it's coding or truck driving. So that is about 5 years of dedicated learning, of doing just that. Now, the reports are asking all of us to be flexible and to reskill. But what does that actually mean in real life? How can this reskilling even be accomplished given our realities of life? And do we really want everyone to be a jack of all trades and a master of none?
Now, every trade, regardless of what level of complexity it is, comes with its own mastery, with its own routines, practices, experiences of time and space, its own jargon, and its own rituals and culture. This is what anthropologists often refer to as having habitus, knowledge, practice, so much that it becomes implicit and unspoken, an integral part of who you are. Habitus is always a question of embodying practices and realities. So when an anthropologist hears reskilling, they do not think of a synthetic displacement of one occupation category into another. They think how a single human being can be asked to both maintain the habitus of today, which pays the bills today, all the while adopting a new habitus for a new occupation. How does one deliver fresh produce across continent on a tight and highly regimented schedule with legally mandated rest stops, all the while staying current with something like, say, Java, which requires constant learning? Seen from the perspective of the individual, this task is formidable. So reskilling works in theory and in a process perspective, but in an individual and practical perspective, it likely won't work as envisioned precisely because the demand for reskilling fails to acknowledge and therefore does not solve for the embodied realities of work. It unfairly places the burden of change on the individual. Now, is there a way to capture and solve for these emissions of reskilling already before they happen? We want to provoke you today. While others see the future of work as depending on individual skill change, we see it as requiring the change of infrastructure in which work happens, starting with the human body and embodied experiences of work, all the way to the networks and technologies and practices which enable work. So instead of placing the burden of change onto the individual, we want you to see the future of new work not like a reskilled individual, but like a robot, like a change in infrastructure, not like a forcibly changed human being.
Let me make an example. Augmented reality will help reskilling by providing necessary context information when the user requires it. So he no longer has to learn everything by heart and understand everything about the job he's doing. And this can be provided by a system on a need-to-know basis. So this will mean that we will see a different kind of displacement. Instead of the individuals absorbing the demands of reskilling completely, we can build infrastructure that will change to accommodate the capabilities of these partially reskilled workers. And as an extreme form of infrastructure of reskilling, telepresence will not only decouple the physical presence of a worker with the place the work is done, but also by means of artificial intelligence and augmented reality built into this telepresence system, expand not only where a worker can do the work, but also which work he's actually capable of doing.
And if you want to keep seeing differently and dive deeper into the thicket to untangle what it takes to prepare society for a future with robots and as robots, especially from a humanist joint technicist perspective, talk to us at futureofwork@roboy.org.
Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Lux and I'm the CEO of Seluxit, a small Danish company. I will be giving you the presentation 10 minutes from sensor to dashboard and how we do rapid prototyping. Seluxit was founded by me and my co-founder Morten Frederiksen in 2006, and already that time we had the idea of making Internet of Things, only it wasn't called Internet of Things at that time. We are based in Aalborg in Denmark and we call ourselves a full-service IoT provider. Our main focus is on getting our customers quickly into the market by using our standard components. In 2018, we did an IPO on the Nasdaq First North in Copenhagen. Some of our more prominent customers are, among others, Husqvarna and Gardena, where the Gardena Smart Garden system with the robotic lawnmower systems is running over our system, and Innogy, whom I'm sure you know, where we have provided smart meters for homeowners. Our strength is that we not only supply an IoT platform, but we integrate this with hardware as well. So we have both hardware components and software components. On the hardware components, we have a Linux based computer, which is compatible with the Raspberry Pi, only it uses industrial grade components, but we also have smaller and cheaper devices. And this is all integrated with a rapid prototyping solution where you can point and click to deploy new functionality to these devices. And on the other hand, we also have a dashboard and we have an app where you can then immediately see your data. The app is open source, so you can use this as a basis for your own native app for iOS and Android. And we also have the possibility of making web apps. Here we show some of our projects that we are working on or have been working on. So in the bottom left part, you see the Gardena system. It's a robotic lawnmower, a gateway, a soil moisture sensor, and a watering computer. And then it is all controlled by an app. This system was launched in 2016, and it took about 15 months of development from start to the market, so to being in DIY stores. On the top left corner, you see a metering solution which we developed for Innogy. And then on the top right, we were part of the Cura project, which aims to transform containers into intensive care units. And another project which is just about going to enter the market is a product we call Heartbeat, which is monitoring heart starters over the mobile GSM network, so that you are sure that the heart starter works when you need it. So what is the worth of IoT data? This picture represents IoT data taken with very low resolution. So what you probably can see is, well, maybe the weather in this picture is nice, but not much else can be seen. Now let's increase the resolution. Well, if you look from far away, then maybe, you've got it? Well, maybe you can recognize it's the White House. But who stands on the balcony? Aha, maybe someone we know. So what you have to realize with data resolution is that low res is also cheap, but you do not get the same information as with higher resolution. However, maybe you actually preferred this picture to this picture. The higher the resolution, the more expensive the sensor, the more expensive the processing, the more expensive the transportation of the data, and the more expensive the storage of the data is. So you really need to check how much is this information worth versus how much does it cost to acquire it. And then you will find out where is the correct resolution for your data. This is my house in Denmark, in Skørping. And what you see is I chose the period of New Year's Eve. So what you can see is at the 1st of January, we came home at 1 o'clock because this is in UTC, so Universal Time, which is 1 hour off. And then on the 1st, we actually went for a short vacation away to a summer house. So you can see that the house was empty. And then on the 4th of January, you can see we came home in the afternoon, and then we started washing clothes, and then later on the next day we washed some more clothes, and then we cooked and we baked. So you can definitely see activity in your house. So this data can actually be used for useful services. For example, imagine this were your grandma, then you would know, is there activity in the house, because you want grandma to cook, to switch on a TV or switch off the light. If nothing happens, something is probably wrong. Another thing we have been working with is predictive maintenance. So we all know preventative maintenance from our cars. At 40,000 kilometers, we will need to have it maintained, and we need a service, and we need some parts changed. This is because the car manufacturers do not want cars to break down, and they know that only less than a certain percentage will break down if you do this preventive maintenance. However, if you know more about these machines or cars, then you will know, we can actually put this limit higher. So maybe the car is allowed to drive 50 or 60,000 kilometers on average in order for a small percentage to break. If you have predictive maintenance, because you have enough data, then you will know when the machine will break down. Maybe it starts vibrating, maybe it uses more electricity. You will be able to predict that a machine will break down when it has a certain behavior. Now a short overview of how we develop for our customers. What we do is we do a kickoff, we do a very quick proof of concept. We would like to do a proof of concept project within 2 to 4 weeks. Then 4 to 8 weeks again, we will have a pilot. The proof of concept is only one device, and it will be at our location. The prototype pilot will be 5 to 10 devices, which the customer can play in controlled environments. And then after again 12 to 16 weeks, we will have the first round of devices, maybe 50 to 100, that the customer can use to actually do an acceptance test. Then we do a hardware production of 0 series. This will typically take about 20 weeks. And then after 26 weeks, you can enter real volume production with a certified product. And I hope you enjoyed this talk. And if you have any questions, please drop me a line on the chat.